Boys, what is up? It is your boy D, and this is DeezCards. Today, we are going to be messing around with 30 doll hairs. That's right, 3 copies of the Spirit Charmers structure deck. Now, I will say, right off the bat, deck's a little sus, but if you also got suckered into buying your 3 copies of it like I did, well, I'm sure you're trying to build a deck with it. Boy, do I have the deck for you. If you were here, you were one of D's boys, regardless of gender. If you haven't been here before, just know my channel is all about cracking brews with the boys, the best Pokemon, Yu-Gi-Oh, etc. content that you could find across the entirety of the interwebs. Please don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Check out my affiliate links below if you would like to pick up this deck for yourself. I know I said it's sus, but the artwork is really cool and it has a lot of history in Yu-Gi-Oh! As one of the older archetypes, so it is a lot of fun. There's a lot of nostalgia behind it. I'm just busting its balls when you compare it to the Sacred Beast structure deck that came out right before it that had crazy starts like Opening of the Spirit Gates and the Beast cards, the Beckoning Beast cards. Those cards were crazy starters. When you have this one that it's just not quite all there in the structure deck, but it is a lot of fun regardless, so let's check this out. Your girlfriend, you know you're watching this? Hey, he's looking at boobs. Yeah, so anyway, let's get it going, boys. Alright, so the first thing that I want to point out about this deck is I am not playing all of the attributes in this deck. Now, the weird thing about it is they don't really synergize together very well. And now, the way that I approached this was a very heavy going first build. We want to get as many interruptions on the board as possible, stopping your opponent from building theirs, then coming back around the next turn to swarm the field and start doing some damage. I focus primarily on the fire, well actually not even primarily, I only focus on the fire and the earth attributes in this build because those are the only attributes in the deck for whatever reason that had your 2 big guys, Awakening of the Possessed cards. They did not include Water one or a Wind one in the structure deck, so that is why we're doing it this way. The way that you want to go about this, you want to get your Familiar Possessed card out there, you want to get your Extender, you want to summon from the deck your Awakening Possessed, bringing back one of these guys, have your field spell out there so that you have a negate. Then we play some other staples in there like Book of Eclipse and Solemn Warning to help keep your opponent from doing things on their turn, and that is more or less the strategy that I'm going for in this deck. It's not super complicated, but when I was looking through the cards to think of what was actually good, this is what I came up with. Now, like I said, I don't look at other Yu-Gi tubers' deck profiles before I build this, so this is all from the top of my noggin. I don't have a problem with not playing cards that are part of the archetype. Like, I don't mind that I'm leaving things out, like the wind and the water. Just like in my Sacred Beast deck profile, if you haven't checked that out, check it out. I left all the Sacred Beasts out except for Ravael. Hell, I don't even play Blue Eyes in my Blue Eyes deck. So that's how much I don't give a shit. Alright, so now that I've given you a general idea of what this deck is trying to do, let's get into the actual deck profile and the ratios of those cards. I'm playing 2 of the Awakening of the Possessed, Greater Inari Fire. This card lets you do burn damage, and it also lets you pull spells and traps, possessed spells and traps from your deck if it is destroyed. To get into that card, I am playing 2 Familiar Possessed Hidas. Now, you only need any spellcaster, but with the field spell, it needs to be a spellcaster with 1500 defense. So that's why I'm playing the Familiar Possessed at all. And also, we want to call it a Spirit Charmers deck in the first place, so I'm playing 2 of those. Then I have 3 of the Inari Fire. These ones are more difficult to search, that's why I play 3 of them as opposed to the 2. This guy, by the way, and this guy can special summon themselves from the deck. That's some like Time Wizard, Dark Magician, get that Dark Sage on the board shenanigans. So it's a very interesting method of summoning, but it's pretty cool. So I'm also playing 2 of the Earth one. And that one lets you special summon from the graveyard when it's summoned, and I think that's what makes it the better card to play. Again, I got 2 of the Familiar Possessed Ausas. It has 1500 defense, so the field spell synergizes with that. And then 3 of the Extenders. The Nefarious Archfiend, Eater of Nefariousness, special summon itself to the field when there's a spellcaster. Then this is one of the better starter cards, the Spirit Charmers. I'm playing 3 of these. So like anytime that you'd want to play a starter card, you would play 3 of them. So I'm playing 3 of these. Discard a card and you get to search your possessed spells and traps. You get to search your familiar possessed monsters. So that's a way to help get your bigger boys on the field on the first turn. I'm playing 2 of the Awakening of the Possessed, searchable by the Spirit Charmers card, so you actually have 5 copies of it. When a spellcaster was normal or special summoned once per turn that has 1850 attack, you get to draw a card. Yu-Gi-Oh! Players love drawing cards, that's why I'm playing more than one of those. I'm playing 1 of the Possessed Partnerships and 1 of the Unpossessed. So the Possessed Partnerships let you special summon a monster with 1500 defense, so that helps with the field spell, which we'll get to in a second. Because there's an interruption involved in that field spell, that's cool. But it being a trap card, it's kind of sus. Don't really like that about it, that you gotta wait and you have to activate it during standby or something like that to get it on there, to get the negate. If anything, this card is kind of cool in that if you have the field spell and you want to let your opponent's first monster effect go through before you negate it, because that is a mandatory effect and we'll get there. This is a way to alter the timing, but it is searchable with Spirit Charmers again, so I don't think I need to play more than 1 of it. Then the Unpossessed, it only protects your Charmer monsters from being destroyed by battle, of which we're not playing any of in this deck because they're absolute trash. It does give your familiar possessed monsters an attack boost, and it also does give you a special summon effect, so that's pretty cool. 1 of those. The fact that they're searchable is why I'm only playing 1. It's pretty tight. I'm playing 3 Fairy Tale Luna. It lets you draw a card with Awakening of the Possessed, which is cool, and it is also an interruption on your opponent's turn. We want a decent board going first, and we want interruptions so that we can come back around and deal some damage the next turn. We've got 1 Witchcrafter Golem. This is a hand trap. It's actually pretty good. A decent interruption when one of your spellcaster monsters are targeted for an effect or an attack. You can special summon this and then bounce that card, which is pretty cool. Unfortunately, you need to wait for your opponent to do something. Effect Veiler, I got 3 of those. I said it's primarily a going first deck, but we do have 4 hand traps, more or less. Effect Veiler is just good later in the game, and it is a spellcaster, so there is some synergy there. It's not a dead card completely when you're going first. You will notice that I'm not playing Dark Ruler No More, which had a common reprint in this deck. Reason for that being is if you want to go first, that card does nothing. This deck wants to go first. So then we have the Grand Spiritual Art Ichirin. This is a mandatory negate of your opponent's first monster effect. You also can cycle a spellcaster monster out of your hand to grab 1 of the extenders. So that's how this card searches extenders, your Nefarious Beast and your Inari Fire. You also got the ability to cycle out those Effect Veilers from your hand. You know, Effect Veilers in your hand, it's dead because you're going first. You can cycle that out of your hand to get an extender, and that could potentially set you up with the Earth Awakening Possessed monster and leave you on a better board. Plus, you'll have an interruption on your turn when you special summon back the familiar possessed monster off the Earth monster's effect. So we got 2 of those in there. Also have 2 Secret Village of the Spellcasters and 1 Terraforming to keep it going with the field spells. I think that Secret Village is a pretty good interruption. Now, I'm not playing Twin Twisters, which comes with this deck either, and in my mind I was thinking, well, do you want to wait for them to do something and react to it, or do you want to stop them from activating spell cards at all? And you're always going to want to end your first board with a spellcaster, so Secret Village will always be better than Twin Twisters when you're going first. We'll get to the side deck cards in a second. Spellbook of Knowledge, every Yu-Gi-Oh player likes drawn to. Unfortunately, you do have to use 1 of your monsters from the field, but again, you could potentially set up your board and at the end of the turn draw 2 just to have more resources for the next turn. Then you have a Book of Eclipse and 3 Solemn Warning. Mess with the ratio in whichever way you like. I just think that these are really good interruptions to stop your opponent from playing on their turn. Maybe you want 2 Book of Eclipse. Maybe you want 3 Book of Eclipse and 1 Solemn Warning. Mess with that ratio. But these are another way to interrupt your opponent from playing so that when you get to go back around on your turn, you can mess with them. So you have a lot of cards in this deck that will stop your opponent from building their board. We don't play a lot of cards in this deck like Dark Ruler No More or Twin Twisters that break your opponent's board, but that's because we are trying to be proactive and going first. So we are going first. I want to talk about the cards in the deck that potentially help you out as side deck options. So you have Raigeki. This card is good, but if you're going second and your opponent has any negate set up, it's going to get stopped. So would you rather see Raigeki or would you rather see Dark Ruler no more? I'd probably play Dark Ruler siding it in over Raigeki because they're not going to be able to respond to it with monster effects. So Raigeki, while it is a good card, and maybe you should try it out for the nostalgia, the memes, maybe it does well for you. I just think that Dark Ruler No More has a better chance of going through when you're going second, which is when either of these cards is useful in the first place. You have Denko Seka, which is an option to stop your opponent from activating back row. If you know you're playing against a back row heavy deck, you can side this in. You got more copies of Book of Eclipse potentially. You have your Twin Twisters, if you know again that they're playing a back row deck or there's a specific spell and trap card you need to get rid of. And then we have the Dimensional Barrier. Potentially this does more work than Solemn Warning because it stops your opponent from special summoning all cards of the declared type. Problem with this card is it doesn't stop link monsters, and that is very heavy in Yu-Gi-Oh! These days. So, I don't know, might not be the best option. But those are all side deck options for you to try out. Give this deck a shot. Please let me know what you think. Let me know if I'm completely off base here and there is hidden potential in this deck and a lot of strength that I missed. It seems like kind of an underwhelming deck, but what I'm trying to do, like I said, is just set up a decent board, stop your opponent from doing things on their turn, coming back around and doing some damage, and hopefully locking it down in that way. It's kind of like an aggro control based deck, focusing on the fire and the earth monsters because those are the strongest attributes in this deck. I don't really know why they don't synergize. I don't know why Konami didn't give you all of the Awakening Possessed monsters. I don't know why they didn't give you Link monsters because they exist. But hey, this is a starting point. It's 30 bucks. It's not going to break the bank. But if you want me to be honest with you, you're better off spending that $30 to pick up 3 copies of Ash Blossom and throwing that in a deck you already own. Thanks again for stopping by. I'm going to try to figure out how to upgrade this deck and make it stronger. We're going to look at the other Awakening Possessed cards. We'll look at the Link monsters, see if there's synergy with any other weird archetypes out there, and we'll come back for another deck profile in the near future. It's been a lot of fun as always. Thanks for being one of my boys. I'll catch you next time. Got 'em.